This is chapter 39. My favorite chairman. I have no clear recollection when I met my favorite African warrior, a German national expat named Nick, a chairman, as I always call him. That's my example of his accent. I believe it was when he showed up in a garden at my new live-in partner's home in Swakop. One day after he had several ladies in tow. While Jenny, that was my new partner, served formal tea to all of us in the shade next to her pond, filled with Japanese koi, under a tall palm tree, and amongst delicious-smelling flowers and multicolored birds surrounding her beautiful, very private, fenced-in home in the middle of town of Swakopmund. Everyone in the West Coast area knew I was the American judo teacher. Yet for some reason that day, he continued to brag and brag about his kickboxing skills. In judo, we never talk about fighting skills in front of others. He claimed he was the German brown belt champion in judo. But his real skill was as a world-class black belt contender for Germany in kickboxing. I let him talk. He wasn't hurting anyone, he certainly wasn't hurting me. I had moved in with Jenny, and it's a great story which you'll hear later. She was full-figured, a polite old man talk, that's for a great body, gorgeous, mid-40s, blonde, British expat. She was a widow. She owned a native Namibian hand carpet and rug weaving business. I have one of them right in the next room. She owned a terrific home right out of a movie scene, a converted old medical mission. And she was my first attempt to have a real relationship in Africa. And we actually liked each other, although she was totally freaked out as a vegetarian. No meat of any kind or any hint of animal would cross her threshold. Yuck, but it was her house. Since I left America, I avoided women, especially if they were attractive or interested in me. I could not afford to alienate any segment of the Namibian population, and I needed more time to train and teach my judo club. I had recently organized them, and I could not afford to be seen taking sides. The first instant I met Jenny, she knocked me out cold, and from then on, I could have cared less about my politically correct rules. I never went out to the few bars that were in town, and I never went out to the few bars that were in town. I rarely went to Kelly's after hours place. I needed to be seen as a teacher and a serious American volunteer. I could not flirt, and I couldn't get caught flirting. It was terrific. I actually liked that part of my life. And then I met Jenny. But that's for later, maybe. That particular day at Jenny's, I invited Nick to our regular evening practice judo session, along with his wife and another lady. I asked him to teach my class and demonstrate his world contender kickboxing skills. He was really a great teacher, and still is, by the way. The class was awed, and they wanted to see more. I tossed my old judo jacket to him and confronted him. "Now show me your judo stuff, dude. Take your best shot." I smiled and stood totally relaxed, ready for whatever. Suddenly, he unleashed a blinding kick at my chest. He had a kick like a mule. It rattled me, truthfully, and it rattled me off balance backwards. But my instincts always protect me. I brought my left arm up in a hook-type karate arm block around his ankle to keep him off balance, and took the full impact of his extended leg against my hooked arm and my forearm. His heel hit the very center of my chest, but without force. The instinct to block took most of the sting out of it. I held him frozen in space, standing on one leg. I grinned him into his face. I advanced one simple step into him, and I nailed him with my favorite judo contest throw, Osotogari. An outer reaping of the opponent's standing leg, holding his entire weight, reaching my own leg extended far behind him, then reversing it quickly and sweeping his weight, holding the leg out from under him. I threw him viciously, causing him to slam hard on his back, near the shoulders and neck. I had brutally swept out his only standing leg from under him. He crashed hard. I rattled him back. He would not admit nor forget the pain, but he had to stop training for a few weeks as it shook him up so hard. I shrugged innocently and smiled at the class, at the parents, and all the onlookers. But in true martial arts style, we had both established a pecking order about who was in charge. Then I coached him to start training with us at the Swakop Judo Club, and promised to come to Windhoek to help him build his own judo club. I wanted to start a club everywhere in Namibia, so that they could all compete against each other once a year as our national Namibian team. With Nick aboard as coaching material, we had the beginning of a real national team. We became actually brothers instantly, and never broke our friendship even to this very day, ever. He was loyal to me as Namibian Shihan, that means father or founder, and as the national sensei. I was actually in charge of judo. He was young and tough. He fought in all the tournaments. He took on all comers from any other country, including an Italian national champion who came to Namibia directly from the Kodokan training in the Mecca of all-world judo in Tokyo, Japan. Nick became our national Namibian champion. He's still serving as the current 6th degree international judo coach of the entire Namibian national team. That changed 2 weeks ago. I wrote this book years ago, but that changed 2 weeks ago. He is now doing exactly the same thing I'm doing in Dover, Delaware at Murphy School, just starting his own team. They went to the World Championships 2 years ago and took a gold and a silver recently in the African Cup, the mandatory African Union prelims for a selection process for African Olympians. We had another South African warrior in our midst, Hein, quite a he-man, best known now because he took a second in the South African survival reality TV show, the only one who could light a fire the old way. He was my teacher. He taught me everything I know about the African bush. He even taught me how to build a fire without matches. Hein was truly the uncontested all-time fiercest guy I ever met. Everyone was afraid of Hein, but he was my hero, an Afrikaner's Afrikaner. Voten, my favorite doctor, called him a Riki, that's a nickname for recon, and explained that they were constantly stationed in the bush for a whole war and could live off a piece of string for a week. Maybe that's a bit over the top, but it's pretty close. Riki is South African Army slang for the fiercest warriors of our time. He lived, fought in, and loved the bush. He admitted he was trained by U.S. Marines and Navy SEALs, and he thought I was sent to Africa by God through the United States Marine Corps. That wasn't true, by the way, but if he thought it, I wasn't going to argue with him. He showed up at our dojo one night and stood silently off to the side, scowling as he watched me in the middle of instructing a class. It was distracting, but I knew he was important. Others who were with him all looked up to him and deferred to him. He watched the entire exercise session, observing my regular teaching techniques and the acceptance of all comers, black, white, or any shade whatsoever. I thought, would he abide by that in a national constitution to be written for our admission to the Namibian Sports Council? Equality. I wondered, could he be the one for my replacement? And darn if it didn't turn out that Nick was a computer expert as well.